Hello, my name is David Zhang, and I'd like to share with you one of my projects that I did as a Master of Architecture student at Woodbury that was featured on the Woodbury Instagram page. So I was very excited, and it was a very fun project for me. So let me just dive in here. So this project was called A City Within a City. It was also part of my final review, and my instructor was Ryan Martinez. So the basically where we started was our teacher explained that as an architect, we have clients that sort of tell us what programs, how much square footage, what budget to work with. So this was to sort of simulate that process. For this project, we had to find out exactly how much square footage, all the different elements. And the central piece around this project was the 12 unisex bathrooms, which would sort of be the main function and centerpiece around this park. So we had to calculate all this ourselves, and we had to sort of figure out a way to get it on our area that we were assigned and make it all fit. So my composition is pretty straightforward. I took the area itself that the park would be, which is right around here, and sort of looked at it from a figure grounds perspective. I then looked at the streets and sort of realized that they formed a grid-like pattern. So I took that, and this grid-like pattern is a Spanish design opposed to a North American, which is just straight up and down. So it sort of stood out to me. And I applied that to this box right here, which is the same square footage as my park. And that's how I knew I would stay within the program. And from that point on, I added the different elements. So these little squares represent the bathrooms. I placed them wherever the lines intersected. And then I placed these larger structures, which are the shells, to make it feel more dense around it. And then from that point on, I added the rest of the program. I shifted each part to make it a little bit more playful and fun, but I always maintained this dotted line to make sure that there was a way for circulation for my guests to get through the park. And I added the rest of the program here. And that's how I came up with how I would create the park, how I'd fit all the square footage on it. So as you can see from this 2D top-down view, just the very simple design that I came up with just blocks to figure out how everything was going to fit. So we have circulation, seating, we have lockers, we have ground maintenance lockers, we have the shells, and we have the bathroom on the inside. And from a 3D view, we can see it's supposed to feel very dense like a city. But I was making sure that the square footage fit the whole time within the program. So underneath the shells, you can see, I'll do it again, these little gray squares that are the actual unisex bathrooms, and that's sort of the actual meat and bones of the park. But these shells are to make it feel more playful, more fun, take up more space, and feel more like a city. So the circulation, which is this gray, dark gray area right here, you can see that's made from letters, numbers. So that's an 8, that's a D, are inspired by freeways. So you can see with the circles and the twists and turns. There's also areas that cut through the park, which I wanted to exemplify in the park. So from this plan view, which is a top-down view of my park, you can see these structures are the shells, these darker areas with the tectonics on them. And this with the grid on here is the circulation that kind of follows through. So as you can see in this area right here, when you actually cut through, you can see the circulation cuts through just like that photo I showed you before, as well as the bathrooms are hidden within the shells, which are hollow, and not every single one has a bathroom in it. So you have to sort of go into the park to see which one has a bathroom in it, which one is just solid mass. So a closer look, all the bathrooms are ADA compliant, which means wheelchair accessible, where they can rotate and get through. And they all meet the codes of bathrooms. And you can circle in through these shells. So from this front view, you can see there is the LA city behind it. And then if you scale down, my park is another city, but it's a lot more playful. And then when you cut through the shells themselves, you can see there is another building inside. So it's sort of a city within a city within a city. And from the left-right view, you can also see same thing applies. So it's supposed to feel really dense, really busy like a city. Um, So from this X metric, you can see there are seats, there are follies, there are shells, and they're all play with different scales. There are fountains, which are even smaller. And when we look through the rendering, I made sure that the design was very colorful because even though it exemplifies a city, I didn't want it to be boring, gray, and like how we see in some regular cities. I want it to be fun. I want to draw people in. The shapes themselves are supposed to be playful and fun. So here's another side. Here is the left-right view. And as you can see, the buildings have different levels. So for example, this structure right here is on ground floor, and then you have to go up a ramp to the second part. That is supposed to exemplify in cities. We have different elevations as well. So when you're walking across the street and you see my park, you're supposed to be drawn in. You're wondering, what is that? It's impossible to miss. Makes you want to go inside and explore. And you can also use it as a bathroom. And when you're inside, you can see it's a lot more playful than a normal city. The cuts aren't even. There's parts that cut through the actual park itself. And I want to make this very urban-like feeling. That's really busy. Walking through massive buildings on either side. So really try to focus on that. And you can see that every different angle, it looks slightly different. There are different tectonics, different materials that we see in a regular city. And so these circles are supposed to represent roundabouts. And from every angle, it looks slightly different. So I want to get into a little bit of the individual pieces. So for some of the shells, they are solid masses where it just cuts through the park, but there's nothing inside. And then other parts, they're called shells where they're more hollow. You can see through the cut sections. There's actually a lot of empty space inside where the bathrooms would be housed. And then the bathrooms themselves were solid masses that sort of had this design inspired by buildings. Also inspired by Rachel Whiteread's work, where she made these massive follies. This is a grounds maintenance. This is a folly that just has no program other than you can walk through it. And then we have seats here that are designed like buildings to play with scale. So that is basically my project. Thank you for